How about let the kids leave? No. How about let food in? No. You have the most precise munitions in the world, but you're blowing up Christian churches and schools and hospitals? Tell me why you're doing that. If that conversation even begins, there's no way to win that debate.
Now, you do know that, first, targeting civilians and starving kids and doing all that stuff directly as a tactic would be terrorism, would be...
This is terrorism. What the Israeli government is doing in Gaza.
What's up, everybody? Jackson here, and I want to flag two things up front before we get into this Tucker Carlson and Doug Wilson conversation. First, Wilson tells Tucker that opposing Islam because it produces criminals isn't bigotry. And when Tucker asks directly whether the problem is religion or crime, Wilson's answer is, that is the same thing. I'm treating that as what it is. Collective religious prejudice against roughly 2 billion people, not a defensible position. Second, there's a claim in this conversation that a specific Jewish advocacy organization deliberately orchestrated Muslim immigration into Western countries as a demographic strategy. That's a conspiracy theory, not a fact, and I won't present it otherwise. What I actually want to focus this breakdown on is something different. Tucker's own real-time discomfort with where the conversation kept going, and the documented campaign finance and war cost figures that got raised, because those are the parts of this exchange that hold up to scrutiny on their own. Stick with me. Let's get into it.
Israel's important because we say it's important. That's the only reason.
Well,
what's its strategic importance other than that? Are there trade routes that go through it? They have a ton of oil we need? Like, what is this? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think it's a very simple thing, and that is going back to our friends, the Christian Zionists. They're a huge voting bloc in American domestic politics. Right?
Well, of course.
Right, and so anybody who wants to be successful in American politics on the right of center has to demonstrate
You're absolutely right.
Has to demonstrate an affection for Israel.
No doubt. But what I'm saying is, like, at some point, I get that, and that's the core weakness of our system, is that it's easily subverted by blocks of voters who are highly organized. Okay, got it. Jefferson worried about this. It's been a problem for a long time. I'm just saying, at this point, you kind of have to have room for independent judgments about what is in our country's interest geostrategically. And we have so wildly inflated the importance of this tiny country, which I think is a beautiful country, and I can't visit, but I want to because I love it, that no one, you're like, well, we have to be more closely allied with Israel than any other country. It's like, well, why? And no one can answer you. Well, because they're threatened. Well, so are a lot of countries. So is Rwanda. So is Congo. I mean, I've just traveled too much. Like, they're not alone in having neighbors that don't like them. Right. And so, but why is that my problem when we're about to run into this brick wall of debt obligations?
I would say, and this is going to take more time than we have, but the people in this instance, the people who don't like them, the Muslims, surrounding Muslim countries, are also people who don't like us. And Muslims...
Who specifically? Which government are you talking about?
Okay, that's the government of Dearborn, Michigan.
Well, you know, a lot of the Muslims in Dearborn are Christian. Well, I mean, a lot of the Arabs in Michigan are Christian, so just like in point of fact. And I'm okay with them because they're fellow Christians, even though, they look different. But I don't know. I haven't been to Dearborn in a long time. I can't speak to Dearborn. I'm against, I'm a Christian. But I rate that against the actual threats.
Well, think of it this way. I've seen England for years. I've seen England as 20 years behind the continent and America as 30 years behind England. And currently every major city in England is governed, it has a Muslim mayor. Their immigration policy has been disastrous like ours. Only ours, our southern border, has been largely Pentecostals and Trinitarian Catholics that have come across the border. Right. Islamists in Germany and Islamists in the UK are an entirely different
I have family in Europe. I'm there constantly. I was there like 10 days ago, so I agree with you completely.
And so someone could argue, as I would, that the Muslims who are threatening Israel are Muslims who are threatening us.
Yeah, I mean,
Islam is a greater threat than the Jews.
Yeah, is the problem with the Muslims of Europe that they're too Muslim or that they're criminals?
Well,
I mean,
that's the same thing.
Yeah, it's not though, actually, and it's not. And
no, the Muslim.
Let me ask you this, and I'm totally not for Islam. Okay,
yeah,
I'm a Christian. Why are there twice as many Christians living in Qatar as there are in Israel? Do you think?
Twice as many Christians in Qatar as
in Qatar. Yeah, the Islamist slave state that we hear so much about. But there are twice as many Christians living there as in Israel, and they can leave if they want. They came freely, but there are twice as many in Qatar. Why do you think that is?
Can they build churches?
Yeah, actually, the state gave them the land for their churches. But why is that? If what you're saying is true, because it's not true, actually. Right. Islam is false. I don't believe in it. Right. Don't want my kids to be Muslim. I'm not Muslim. But we have the reality that you experience when you get outside the American media biosphere is so different, the reality from what you're describing. The second question I want to ask is, how do we get all these Muslims here after 9/11? They all came after 9/11.
Yeah.
Who encouraged that exactly? Who encouraged that? And it's a lot of the same people who are now encouraging us to hate Muslims. Actually, ADL was totally for it. Totally for it. We want to make
who?
ADL.
Oh, ADL.
Completely for that. You could not, for 25 years. No, they encouraged that. So what is that? I don't know what that is, but I know that the same people who are like Islam is the problem are the same people who brought us all these Muslims here.
Right, because
I feel like I'm being played a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. The left wants discord. The left wants to foment problems.
Well, they don't like white Christians, so they wanted to dilute the population in the United States, and they did it systematically through migration, and they did the same thing in Western Europe. And I think we should stop all immigration, period. And I would also say that at this point, you can't, we have this non-Christian society. Like, we're not going to have an overwhelming Christian society in my lifetime, sadly. But what do you do with that? And the first thing you do is recognize that attacking people on the basis of their DNA is going to turn us into Rwanda. And so you have to, and the same people crying anti-Semitism constantly, telling me I can't have free speech rights because there's anti-Semitism, are the same people telling us that we have to hate Muslims because they're Muslim. Well, and how is hating Muslims better than hating Jews?
Yeah, it's not.
Exactly.
If you hate Muslims because they're Muslim, that's
the same as hating Jews because they're Jewish.
Yeah, correct.
I'm out.
But if you are opposed to Muslims who have read the Quran, which I've done a couple times, I read through the Quran, and the Muslim Brotherhood, the people, the jihadis, are not twisting the Quran.
I'm sure. I wouldn't know.
They are being consistent with it, and I see them as a far greater threat to the West than the state of Israel is. And so protecting Israel from Muslims, you could argue, is a roundabout way of protecting. It's a proxy.
How's that work for us?
So
we went to war in Iraq in March of 2003 at the behest of Israel, flat out. Bibi said it. Glad you're doing it. And I don't know, there's no debate about that. And then in the years since, we've gotten millions of Muslims in the United States, millions, since the Iraq War.
Yeah.
So how's that program worked out for us? We didn't have any Muslims in the United States when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And as our support for Israel has become more and more fanatical, which it is, it's fanatical, can't even discuss it, anti-Semite, we've gotten more Muslims. So I don't think this works the way that we think it does.
Right. I think that the whole system at the top is demented.
Yeah, you think?
But that doesn't change the facts on the ground. We've got the problem that we have in Dearborn is a problem that London has and a bunch of other UK cities have, because we have lost our center. As the poet says, the center gives way.
No doubt.
Everything's sunk. The best lack conviction, the worst are full of passion and intensity. And that's where we are.
I would argue that because we are involved militarily and on many other levels in the Middle East, at the behest of Israel, we're there because of Israel. We have an air base in Qatar because of Israel. We've all these troops there because of Israel. We have a lot of Muslims.
We might have an airbase in Idaho, Qatari, if the deal goes through.
Why is that? Because Israel bombed Doha because they were doing we were doing a peace negotiation with Hamas. Why is that our job? Why is any of this our job? We've invaded the world and then we've imported the world. It happened to Britain. That's why they got immigration in the 60s, because their empire was coming down and they're like, oh, you're from Barbados, you're from Nigeria, those were British colonies, you move here.
Right.
And we're doing the same thing. So how about we don't have actual interests in the Middle East other than oil. Let's just pull back because this is destroying our country. This is an effort to defend what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza, which is totally indefensible as far as I'm concerned. And the more you know about it, the harder it becomes to defend. And basically, if you go down this path, you wind up in a place where you can't, how could you defend that? Mm-hmm. How about let the kids leave? No. How about let food in? No. You have the most precise munitions in the world, but you're blowing up Christian churches and schools and hospitals? Tell me why you're doing that. If that conversation even begins, there's no way to win that debate.
Now, you do know that, first, targeting civilians and starving kids and doing all that stuff directly as a tactic would be terrorism, would be...
This is terrorism. What the Israeli government is doing in Gaza is terrorism and unconscionable. So that's why there's such resistance to even discussing, like, when is it okay to kill the innocent?
How would you respond to this is sort of big if true. So how would you respond to those who say, you're exactly right, to make war on civilians would be awful, it would be horrific, but I think that that's a lie. I don't think we're doing that. Like, an Israeli saying, I don't think we're doing that.
Well, how about we let cameras in right now? And why aren't we doing that? And why have dozens of journalists been shot in Gaza wearing press credentials on their chests or on their helmets or in their car? This is not, I'm not making this up.
Well,
so, and the answer is because they don't want you to see what's actually happening. So let's just open it up and inspect it. But no one denies that tens of thousands of children have been killed in Gaza. It's just an absolute fact. I visited some of their surviving siblings last week. And I'm only saying, look, I spent 2 years not saying anything about it because I don't want to get involved in this fight because I know they're going to try to get my kids fired from their jobs, which they have, call me an anti-Semite, of course. But at a certain point, it's like, this is hurting the United States, which is paying for it and which is using its credibility to defend it on the world stage. And it's like, how is this good for my country? It's not. Right. And it's also completely rotted the world that I live in, which is like conservative world. And all of a sudden people are like, it doesn't matter if the kids get killed or they blow up 2 churches in Gaza. I'm a Christian. I have a right to think, I don't think it's good to blow up churches, okay? What do they have to do with it? Are they Islamists too now? And all these Christian leaders
were there tunnels underneath them?
They never claimed there were tunnels underneath.
No, I'm just asking.
No, but it's like insane. And by the way, if there were tunnels underneath, sorry, you still can't blow up a Christian church when all your money's coming from a majority Christian country. Sorry, there are limits on what you can do.
Okay.
Tough luck. Again, we should start by saying, and ask anybody who's out there trying to squelch criticism of Israel, ask, is it like regrettable, sad, maybe even immoral to kill someone, a child who did nothing wrong? Mm-hmm. And if you can't say that, then we're just operating from different worlds. I'm sorry. Why can't you say that? Why is that so threatening to say, probably not a good idea to kill a child? They will not say that, and they much less apologize for it. So why bomb churches in Gaza? Tell me. You've got the capacity to put bombs in people's pagers, but you accidentally hit 2 churches? Not an accident. How about you ask for our forgiveness? Well, Israel has not allowed food aid into 2 million people. There's no infrastructure whatsoever. There's no business. They flattened 70% of it. We know that from satellite photos. And so what is that? That's targeting innocent people. I'm not defending Hamas. I'm totally opposed to Hamas. Right. I don't think Bibi should have sent them that much money, which he did and admits. But I'm against it. I'm against all of this stuff.
Right. So if you have 2 groups, Hamas saying, yeah, we did that. We blew up the pizza parlor in Tel Aviv. We claim responsibility for that.
Well, October 7th was like enough of an atrocity to make me pretty anti-Hamas.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good example. Yeah, we did it. We're proud of it. That was our
intention. I'm out. I'm never going to defend you. That's disgusting.
On your, but that's not my point, that you would defend it. I know you wouldn't. The point is that Israel is enough of a Western country to if they did something bad like that, they would not own it. They would lie about it. They are virtuous enough to be guilty of hypocrisy.
No, they're dependent on U.S. aid enough to manipulate the U.S. media, which they do. Their entire country is dependent on U.S. taxpayer dollars, and the numbers are super clear. There would be no wars fought by Israel alone because it's got 9 million people and no resources, and they have a reserve military. They don't have enough people. A huge chunk of their country doesn't work or serve in the military. So they are, and there are a lot of good Israelis who I know, one of whom is in the Knesset who I just talked to. They're very worried that Israel is like way overextended. And why? Because they're backstopped by the U.S. military. And so this is not my chief concern. My chief concern is my country. But if you cared about Israel, man, they're in a bad spot right now. But no one can admit it. They all have to lie about everything. And the people who lie the most, can I say, are the evangelical preachers. If Israel does stuff that I despise, my view is I don't want to pay for that. Okay?
Right.
Get out of my country. Stop trying to censor me. But just go do your own thing in your own Eastern country, which is not Western, sorry.
But the conflict there is not caused, the West Bank, the conflict there is not caused by Israel holding the West Bank. Israel holds the West Bank because of the conflict. So when Israel was formed, the next day or whatever it was, they were invaded. So a lot of what the Israel has...
Well, the West Bank was taken by Israel in 1967 from Jordan.
Right.
So Israel proper, the West Bank is what we used to call an occupied territory. Now they have a new name for it. But
they have a grizzly bear by the ears. Israel does.
Definitely.
Right.
As a lot of Israelis used to say, like we've got Gaza, we have Golan Heights, and we've got what we call the West Bank. And those are what we call the occupied territories. They're majority Arab, majority Muslim Arab, though tons of Christians, fewer now. But yeah, what do you do with that? You can't call yourself a democracy if they don't have full citizenship, but you can't give them full citizenship.
What's actually interesting about this exchange, more than the conspiracy content itself, is watching Tucker visibly resist the direction Wilson kept pushing the conversation. At multiple points, Tucker pushes back directly, asking how hating an entire religion is different from hating Jewish people for being Jewish, and getting Wilson to concede, at least in words, that those are logically the same thing. Tucker also directly says, "I feel like I am being played," which reads as real discomfort with the conspiratorial direction the conversation had taken. That's worth noting because it means even within this exchange, the collective blame framing didn't go entirely unchallenged. Now, to the material that's actually worth taking seriously on its own separate footing. The claim that AIPAC and its affiliated Super PAC spent close to $127 million in the 2023 to 2024 election cycle, with a large share landing directly with sitting members of Congress, is the kind of specific dollar-denominated figure that should be directly checkable against Federal Election Commission filings. If accurate, it's a legitimate subject for scrutiny. The same way concentrated spending by any single issue lobbying group, regardless of its cause, deserves scrutiny in a democracy. The specific claim about spending targeted at unseating Representatives Bowman and Cori Bush following their ceasefire calls is also a specific reported campaign finance story worth checking against contemporaneous political reporting and FEC records. On the war costs and casualty figures, a Brown University cost of war estimate putting the Iraq and Syria conflict bill at roughly $2.89 trillion, with casualty estimates in the range of 550,000 to 580,000 people and millions displaced. Those are academic research figures from a real, ongoing research project and worth checking directly against the published study methodology, since casualty counting in prolonged conflicts varies significantly by source and approach. Here's the distinction I want to draw clearly. legitimate scrutiny of lobbying influence, and the human and financial cost of American foreign policy decisions is fair game, applicable to any interest group and any war, regardless of who's affected. That's different in kind from attributing large-scale immigration patterns to a secret plan by a specific ethnic or religious organization to dilute a population, which is a recognizable conspiracy narrative with a long, dangerous history, not an alternative interpretation of policy data, and a religious leader stating outright that opposing an entire faith is the same as opposing crime isn't a nuanced position on immigration policy. It's a direct statement of collective religious prejudice. Here's what I leave you with. Even Tucker's own discomfort in this exchange is a useful signal. When a conversation moves from let's examine documented lobbying spending to a specific ethnic organization orchestrated, that's the moment worth noticing as the shift from legitimate scrutiny into conspiracy thinking, and it's worth training yourself to feel that same discomfort Tucker expressed, rather than letting the real financial figures lend credibility to the conspiratorial claims sitting right next to them. That's it for this one. If you want to dig into the actual campaign finance numbers or raw cost data on their own terms, those are worth exploring directly and rigorously without the conspiracy framing riding along with them.